Well, it was a week, let's put it that way, for the Seton Hall Pirates as they faced um, two of the top teams in the conference, Marquette and Creighton, and as expected, took a pair of L's and for the most part wasn't very competitive. To recap it, here we are for this week's edition of Hoist the Colors. I'm Tim Best. He's Pat Madden. Let's start right at the beginning with Marquette. It was really, trying to think of the right adjective here, but it was really just disappointing, I think is the easy term to go with, to see how light the attendance was coming off that stinker against St. John's. And it didn't help that, Marquette took it to them early. Seton Hall dug themselves a hole yet again, and not even a career high from 27 points from Isaiah Coleman could have made that game like manageable.
Yeah, I actually wasn't there. I was sick most of last week. So I don't. I kind of want. I was more interested in how Marquette was going to play, sort of having an idea about how we're playing or not playing. Uh, that's sort of that's what you get when you play a top 10 team and you don't have the talent or the wherewithal to compete with them. So that's I mean, I guess you can say they didn't quit. You could say that they didn't totally embarrass themselves the way they did early against St. John's. So you have those things working in your favor. Coleman got, I think Coleman got most of his points in garbage time when the outcome wasn't in doubt. He's done that a couple of times before the rest of the season, sort of when Holloway looks to score some points so that the final score doesn't look as embarrassing as what it could look. I think Marquette was up by as many as 25, and then the final margin was 17. So 76-59 doesn't sort of reflect the nature of the game. But then again, when you're looking, what's your reasonable prediction when Seton Hall is going to play a team like Marquette? This is the type of score you're going to get, particularly unless Marquette gets a couple of injuries or Marquette has the worst shooting game they have all season. So, that's just where a game like that goes.
I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, the 3-point shooting, oh my God, just seeing 1 for 11, I want to puke. But inside, they were pretty good at 20 of 32. I mean, that's 62.5%. I did the math in my head there. And it doesn't help when you give up 10, Marquette hit double digit 3 pointers, um, got to the line quite a bit, 18 for 25. Seton Hall was 16 for 20. Okay, step in the right direction, but you cannot commit 24 turnovers against a team like Marquette and expect to win. To answer the question, I think it was 27. Their largest lead was 27 points. Um, and Marquette also had 15 offensive rebounds, which and 23 points off turnovers. So it makes a difference. And I mean, Isaiah also had their only made 3 pointer, and he was 9 for 14 from the field. So you love to see that first day. Um, but unfortunately, he wasn't available Saturday in Omaha against Creighton. Neither was Chauncey Jenkins. And I will say this, they played a commendable first half. I thought they did a really strong job of making sure that the Creighton crowd didn't, take them out of the game early. It came late in the second half, but that I think I was mainly because the longer they went without having your top two scores, it's going to wear you out. And when you don't have the firepower going up against guys like Kalkbrenner and Ashworth and, even like Jason Green and Amaya Neal, like, yeah, you're going to get the doors blown off of you when you don't have the artillery to counter that, especially in a tough environment like the CHI Health Center. So, what do you make of the performance in contrast to what we saw on Tuesday?
Well, again, good first half. It's interesting that one guy who in particular has he stepped up on Saturday. He's played a little bit better lately, and that's Garway Duel, who a lot of people have written off. Now is are we judging him based upon what our expectations are? Are people giving him a hard time and not accounting for the fact that he was probably injured most of the early part of the season? I don't know. He's got 10 or 11 more games to sort of show everybody what he is or what he isn't. He's shooting the ball a little bit better. He's playing a little bit better defense. One thing he's not doing particularly well is helping run an offense. And that's part of the reason why they turned the ball over so much against Marquette. That's part of the reason why they only scored 54 points against Creighton, is because they don't have a functioning point guard. They have a bunch of guys who are trying. We don't need to rehash that again because that's been an evergreen comment the whole season. They've tried to play Wusu. They've tried to play Duel. They've tried to play Jasir Felton. And they all have some elements to make themselves a point guard. They don't have all of them. My guess is that Wusu's problem. Who knows what to guess? Because a lot of it also depends on what if you're Shaheen Holloway, what do you do? I mean, do you continue to play Duel in the starting lineup and just ride him? But to sort of prove what you may or may not have, because let's be honest, there is the possibility that the switch could go on with Garway Duel, and that you want to be in a position where you can try to keep him. And if you don't give him this opportunity, and the light switch could go on someplace else next season. The other guy I think who's really stepped it up since conference play has started is Prince Aligbe.
Oh yeah.
Again, another guy a lot of people have written off in the non-conference because he struggled. He was shooting. He had a woeful shooting percentage in the non-conference, but he's just stacking up double-digit games scoring wise. Now, again, that's the product of this team not having a lot of people scoring, but he has shown an aggressiveness and a willingness to play when others may not have. And I think that I think he's someone who Shaheen Holloway is going to invest in the rest of this season, because I think this guy has the makings of being the captain next season. And one thing you can say about Aligbe that you might not be able to say about other players on this team is that I think he wants to be here next year. Not sure you can say that about Coleman. Can we definitely say that about Felton? Can we say that about Middleton? Who knows? I mean, that's something which time is going to have to tell over the next 5 or 6 weeks, because for better or for worse, there's not a big gap between when the season ends and when the transfer portal opens up. Why do I think they changed the rules, if I remember correctly? I don't think it opens until Final Four week. It used to be it opened the week during the start of the NCAA tournament,
That's
and a
nice.
bunch of guys who didn't make the tournament would jump in the portal, right as the NCAA tournament was starting. But I think they moved it back and closed the window until the first week of April, so that there'll be 3 or 4 weeks. But we'll know before that what's happening with these players who have the opportunity to come back, and which ones choose to come back, which ones Holloway chooses not to bring back, and so on and so forth. I mean, I know that I went beyond talking about Creighton, but what was what but when you talk about Aligbe and Duel, you're talking about the two guys who really kept Seton Hall in that game in the first half. And one guy you can definitely say it's a product of him working hard, figuring out Holloway's system, and buying in. The other guy, is it just because we unfortunately we didn't have the opportunity to see the real Garway duel because he was injured and trying to figure things out. And now maybe going forward over the next 6 weeks, we will see more of the real Garway duel. Tomorrow night will be interesting in that aspect.
Yeah, Dual had 3 steals against Creighton on Saturday, and he's been racking up the last 3 games. He's totaled 11 steals. That that's a really good number, if you ask me. And granted, 6 of them came against St. John's, but he still picked up 2 more against Marquette, and the aforementioned 3 against Creighton. But I think what also jumps out of the page. Um, he had 5 of Seton Hall's 9 assists. 9 assists on 23 made field goals. That's just not good. What I've heard Shaw say in the huddle, like at least every game that I've watched when they've gone in the huddle, and with Shaw mic'd up, he said, like, we got to get the ball moving. We're not scoring because the ball ain't moving. Like, it's sticking. And guys are standing still. Like, I feel like I hear that every single time on a broadcast and when Seton Hall's in a bit of an offensive dry spell. And he's absolutely right. And the fact that, again, 9 assists on 23 made field goals, that's what, like, not even 40% in that range. Like, it's well under 50%, less than half of the made field goals were assisted. Like, I feel like in order to have a successful, efficient offense, you got to have at least 50% of your made field goals be assisted.
But that goes back to not having a functioning point guard.
Well,
That
correct.
goes back to not having, you look at some of the teams that do have, like, look at Creighton, who, look at what Creighton's stats were. The other Creighton had 19 assists on 28 made field goals. What is the reason why Creighton's getting 19 assists on 28, that's almost 70%, give or take, I think. My math might, it's definitely higher than 60. It's much better than us. What's the reason for that? They have a functioning point guard. Seton Hall does not. So that's sort of something which uh, I don't know if you have enough time to figure that out this season, but it's definitely something that if the staff is doing their job right now and making notes as to what they need for next year, getting somebody who can play the point and improving that number you just referenced is something which needs to be maybe first or second on the list of what you need to have figured out when you're getting your roster ready coming up in the spring.
Well, speaking of what's coming up, this week, I would say I think there's 2 very winnable opportunities there. Providence, they just came off, and Providence fans are going to come at me, but I think it's objectively true that the game Saturday they played against Georgetown, like, because it's Ed Cooley, it's their Super Bowl, and they won their Super Bowl, and now they got to go to Newark to play a Seton Hall team that pushed them quite a bit at the AMP, and now you get them on their home on our home court. I don't know how much of a home court advantage is going to be at the Rock, as we just saw against Marquette, but still a very winnable opportunity, especially because of the deflating news they got about Bryce Hopkins having to miss the rest of the season once again. And I genuinely feel bad for Bryce. He's a good kid, great player. And in the little time that he was able to play, he was fantastic. Obviously, he didn't play against Seton Hall the first time around, wishing him well in recovery. But winnable opportunity there. Let's start there, and then we'll pick it up with opportunity Sunday against DePaul.
We probably catch Providence at the best time you could catch Providence. First, you mentioned that they're coming in a little bit, with a little bit of a hangover from feeling really good against beating Georgetown. And that was a game they were getting their butts kicked early, but they found the intestinal fortitude to take over that game and keep Georgetown away. Jaden Pierre played really well again. I think that he's sort of been one of the undersung better players in the Big East this season. They also solved one of their biggest problems in finding a credible big man in Oswin, and I'm gonna butcher his last name. You probably have a pronunciation key in front of you. Uh, Oswin. Oh boy, this name.
I know who you're
Uryu
referencing.
Oryu Moons. How do you Urhun Mwah. Everyone calls him Oswin.
Aaron Wa- uh, um, Aaron Wanze.
Yeah,
That's
let's try Era Wednesday. Look. It took me a month to figure out Aaron A.
yeah.
And I was working on Aaron A 2 or 3 times a week. So pardon me for not knowing how to pronounce Oswin or Hummus. But
Aaron Wanze.
he has been a lot better for them in the center position, and it took them a while to figure out who was going to play center for Providence. So you put those two guys. They've and even the Seton Hall game a few weeks ago is a measure of what they've been able to figure out without Bryce Hopkins, as they did last season, by the way. On the one hand, you think that I'm sure Providence fans will look back and say what could have been for the second straight year. But I think the other thing is what they've done well is they've come up with the attitude of we're going to do what we can with what we've got. Now, why this game fits into a good spot is not only that Georgetown won, but they're also peaking at this weekend when they go to Madison Square Garden to play St. John's for the first time. And they've got a chip on their shoulder about how their game with St. John's went up in Providence about a little bit more than a month ago when they gave up a 16-point lead in the second half and lost to St. John's. And they would like nothing more than to knock off a ranked team like St. John's in their own building. So not in their own building, in Madison Square Garden. But the point is, they're sort of gearing up. Maybe not as amped up as they were for Georgetown, but they're looking a little bit ahead to what they've got over the weekend. So, you know, Providence could definitely be in for a letdown tomorrow night, and that's a good opportunity for a Seton Hall team that matches up relatively well against Providence. If you get something out of Dylan Adewusu, uh, I don't know what to expect about Coleman and Jenkins because they're you know that that's that those are the type of injuries that, given the way the season's going, you don't want to throw those guys into a game and cause them to get hurt and miss the rest of the season. So then you're going to have to see what Middleton can do. You're going to have to see what Duel can do. You're going to have to see what Oligbe can do. But they can probably score enough points to keep this game interesting if the defense steps up. Which of course the defense has been more absent than not, particularly in Big East play.
So when Seton Hall lost to Providence, the guy that absolutely killed them was Bensley Joseph. I mean, he went on for 28 points. He was 7 of 9 from three. So since then, he had two solid games last week. I know he put up double digits against Georgetown, and then right before that, I think he dropped 20. But the game right after the Seton Hall game, he only had 2 points. The very next game, I'm like, really? Really? You dropped 28 on our heads and then you drop two the very next game? Like, he has a generational performance. And then he's been last two games good, but then obviously not that level of good. So I feel like now they know he is a weapon and they have the game plan to guard him. And you just know that he's not going to have another game like that again against this team. And I guarantee Shaw sure as hell ain't going to let that happen.
I'm not sure. I mean, one of the problems with a guy like Bensley Joseph is that if you give him open threes, he's probably gonna hit him. And one of the issues the defense has had and still has is not being able to properly rotate to close out on 3-point shooters. So I mean, Seton Hall is a good matchup for Bensley Joseph. So, what you've just got to hope that, the reason why he went off in that game on January the 11th was because he was in his building and he had his range that night. Now this is, I think, his first time playing at the Rock. You cannot expect him to hit as many threes, but you can't also give him opportunities to do what he did to you a month ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is very much true. The guys that we were like really looking at the last matchup, like Wesley Cardit, really struggled against the Pirates last time out. Jaden Pierre was solid, and I feel like he's been playing pretty good ball as of late. Obviously, the scouting report is going to be heavily emphasized on him. Um, I think no Chauncey and no Isaiah, they lose or even just having one of them out is going to be detrimental to their chances of winning the game. But if they got both of them back, you know what? I'd roll the dice on this team to steal a win against a Providence team coming off, a win that clearly has a little more meaning given the context than other wins. And let's put it that way. Going to Chicago Sunday to Wintrust, a DePaul team that has squandered. They did beat Georgetown. They finally got their first Big East win. I think it was almost 2 years to the day when they went on the road and beat Georgetown a couple weeks ago. But against the other bottom two teams in the league, meaning Seton Hall and Butler, they blew the 19-point lead against Seton Hall and lost in overtime at the Rock a few weeks back. And then on Saturday, in Chris Holman's return to Hinkle, they fell apart once again and lost a tough game. Given what we've seen, like I feel like again another winnable opportunity. Wintrust obviously is not as daunting of a place to play compared to everyone else in the conference. Like, yeah, that's a great opportunity to get a road victory. And I don't think, yeah, Seton Hall I don't think they've won a true road game all year.
No, that would be, yeah, the only games they won outside of New Jersey were the games in Charleston. So, I mean, this loss keeps you from coming in last, which does that really mean? I think that's more of a moral victory. I mean, it's an actual victory, and it makes you feel a little better about yourself. But again, uh, and get all the wins you can because that's just the way. That's why you play the games. Uh, I've been honestly disappointed with DePaul. Uh, the Georgetown one notwithstanding, Georgetown was missing two of their better players in that game. I don't think Thomas Sorver played that night.
I don't think he did
Uh,
either.
so for as good as a win is a win. DePaul had to beat a shorthanded Georgetown team. That didn't mean that that's an automatic for them. So good on them. I think they're trying. I just don't think that and unfortunately, when they fall behind big early in these games, they really don't either have the talent to make up for it, or they don't have the will to make up for it. It's we're down by 20 points. What's the point of this? That they really have, the game against Villanova that they lost by 44. They got waxed by Creighton uh, about a week ago against a Butler team. They really could have made a little more interesting. They were never really competitive on Saturday. So, again, this is sort of this is the type of thing that Sunday nights, Sunday night 6 o'clock is, for a Big East game, it's about as bad as it can get. It's sort of like it's sort of something where not only will very few people be in the building to watch it in Chicago, but probably not many people be watching the game as well because it just comes at almost the black hole of sports viewing a Sunday night with nothing else going on. So it's an opportunity. Again, you want to see how players you're looking forward to next year react. Do they go out, play hard, and try to win this game because that's who they are? And that's what Shaheen Holloway expects of players. So, or do we, I guess it's sort of weird. One of the things I talked about to some people a couple of weeks ago was sort of how depressed the fan base was, unfortunately. And you can't blame people. When you're 6-13 or 6-14, and you're 1-8, 1-9 in the Big East, that this is not a this is you're not gonna find a lot of happy campers, nor should you when you're playing this badly. So, I guess the point here is that you don't want to add to the misery by losing a game to DePaul. So this week, again, two chances, get two wins, and it makes the overall record at the end not look as bad as what it could. And again, get something out of a League Bay, Felton, Aaron, Middleton, Dool. Get the guys who could be foundational guys for next year in line, and see where and just get something for people to feel good about. Because if those guys play well, your foundational guys who could be your foundation play well, you leave the regular season next year feeling better and not feeling as panicked about what work Seton Hall has to do in the transfer portal.
I mean, I got to agree with you there on pretty much all accounts. I was looking at, yeah, there were a lot of losses for them where they've just gotten the doors blown off them. But something that jumped out on top of an overtime loss to Seton Hall, they've also lost two other games in conference play in overtime. Providence, when I believe Bryce Hopkins was still healthy when that happened in early December. And then they took Marquette to overtime at Wintrust, which, like they have the will, they have that will, like they can dig deep. Unfortunately, there are times when they don't do that, and look at the end result. You mentioned the Villanova loss, and Butler, smoked them in the second half. So, there's that susceptibility. So, yeah, you want to jump on them rather than having to play down by 19, as many as 19, like they did in Newark. So, yeah, and that 6 o'clock window, that's 5 o'clock Central Time, which I feel like is an even more gross time to play a game on a Sunday. Yeah, 5 o'clock. I feel bad. Not just for DePaul to host the game, but Seton Hall to play in that time window as well. I feel like the only saving grace is that like it's the Sunday before the Super Bowl, and that's Pro Bowl weekend, and it's clearly not the Pro Bowl that you and I both grew up watching. It's just glorified flag football. It pretty much actually it is flag football, and then let's not lie about it. So maybe there will be some sickos out there that aren't Seton Hall and DePaul fans that just want to watch it just for the hell of it. And like as we know, DePaul Twitter is goated, and there are people who just love to root on DePaul because I mean guys like Blue Demon Degenerate, and I don't know. It just there's some entertainment value in it somehow, some way. But yeah, I definitely two winnable opportunities. Do I think they're going to go 2-0? I don't think so. You know what? It's very plausible. I'm trying to believe in it, but I'm not trying to like also like get into the headspace of like I'm not trying to get my head too big considering where this team's at 1-8 in conference, 6-14 overall, thinking, oh yeah, we can definitely win, and that we're gonna win two games this week. Can we? Absolutely. I think 1-1's the goal. Is that a fair assessment?
I think if you put the effort you're capable of making, you will get at least a result this week. Now, that is ultimately the question. The question here is, and unfortunately, the effort can't come when you're trying to make a bad score look better, like they did Tuesday night. Yeah, or maybe that was just even Marquette not even making an effort the last 5-6 minutes of that game. You can't do it to sort of like, all right, I don't want to lose by 20, so I'm going to play a little bit harder and only lose by 15. This is about you got to have your stuff together from the jump. Now, again, if Holloway is playing the guys who are playing the hardest and the best right now, like guys like Duel, guys like Alik Bay, uh, Aaron Aron's played a little bit better lately. Uh, maybe you can get something out of Middleton. If you get something in that direction, and maybe Jenkins and or Coleman are healthy and as good to go as they're going to get. If you get guys playing hard off the jump, uh, and at least doing something which remotely looks like executing, you won't fall behind big early, and you can sort of try to get something accomplished and get a lead, and maybe just you know play hard and get to the finish line in one or both of these games. But we'll see what happens.
Got to agree with you there. And I guess the last thing I want to lead on, I feel like I'm doing this for like the second or third week in a row. But I just, I mean, I direct it back to the women's team because Saturday they played in a sold out Walsh Gymnasium against St. John's, their rivals across the river. And, they showed out and got a really strong win in front of the Walsh faithful. I think they outscored St. John's, I think 16-7 in the fourth quarter. Savannah Catalan's back, and they're playing really, really good ball. And another two opportunities to get some good quality wins. They got Butler at home this week, and then they play at Wintrust the day before the men do. So they're third in the standings right now by halfway through conference play. Again, continuing that push for a tournament bid. So Coach B and the squad keep it up and get back to the tournament. It's been 9 long years. So if they keep it up and they keep stacking wins, improving their net, they can find a way in. But I haven't taken a look at that Charlie Cream bracketology in a hot minute. So maybe I will this week, but just had to get that shout out in one last time, especially because of the fact that they sold out Walsh on Saturday.
Yep, they kept. I couldn't get a ticket because they sold it out. So good on the fans for showing up to support the women. They definitely deserve it. Faith Mazonis is one of the most exciting players that one of the most exciting players in the game. Maybe not one of the highest scoring, but definitely someone worth to go out to. Jada Eads is having a tremendous freshman season. You bring back Catalong, you have a couple of the other players in. Again, this is just beat the teams you're supposed to beat. I know they get a game with Creighton in, I think it's a couple of weeks. If I
I think
just looked at
it's next Wednesday.
next one, so it's a weekend. That's an important. That could be one of their last best chances to get a quality win to impress the committee. Because right now, while a couple of their wins technically would count as what they call quad one wins, there's nothing on their resume which really is like, oh my God, they beat this team. They beat Villanova, they beat Marquette, they beat Cincinnati, but they're not like beating a Creighton would be, oh my God, they beat those guys. So that's a big one. I know they played UConn at home a couple of weeks after. I mean, you can't have any real expectations for that game because in the Big East, UConn's on another level. But again, they're in position to be in position going into the first week of February. That's all you can ever ask for from the Seton Hall women's team. And good luck to Tony Vizela, Faith Mazonis, and the rest of the team going for the last 5 weeks of their season.
Amen to that. And I think I'm actually going to capitalize. And Sweeney, I don't know if you're going to be watching this, but like we're going to be hitting you up soon because we definitely want to shine that spotlight on you, and I'm not going to procrastinate on it this week. But that'll be after today and tomorrow. I got to wait and for my grandmother. Lived a great life, 92 years old. So until next week, this will be my last episode next week as a 28-year-old because February 5th, with the women and men playing women at Creighton, men played Butler, 2 games on my birthday. So nice little double dip, which doesn't really happen. Don't really get games on my birthday that often. So it'll be a nice little treat. Hopefully get at least one victory. If you get 2, even better. So that's going to do it for this episode of Hoist the Colors. For Pat Madden, I'm Tim Best. Thanks for tuning in. And until next week, onwards to Tonia. Take care, y'all.